All right, we have five guys up here: Garrett Cole, Spencer Strider, Dylan Cease, Emmanuel Classe, and Joe Ryan. We have all five of these guys paused at the moment in which their front foot has made contact with the ground for the very first time. When that front foot gets into the ground here, we call this foot strike. So when our front foot strikes the ground is where we have paused these guys' videos. At this foot strike position, we want to be able to check off a couple key positions with our body. The first position we want to think about is our belt buckle getting itself rotated and facing our catcher as much as possible. In order to get that belt buckle to be facing the catcher, we need this back hip to have rotated forward. We also need this back knee to have rotated forward. And to help accelerate the back knee and the back hip's rotation, we need to drive through our big toe. And we can see that with all five of these guys, the back hip has gone forward, the back knee has rotated around, and we have driven through the big toe. The back hip has rotated forward, same with the knee, and the foot is driving through the big toe, helping the knee and the hip rotate forward. Same thing with Classe down here. He's driven through his big toe, which helps rotate that knee, which helps get that back hip to rotate, which ultimately gets the belt buckle to face the target. And then same thing here with Mr. Ryan. Everything has rotated forward. What we can also notice and want to check off is that the upper body has separated itself from the lower body. Our shoulders have separated themselves from our hips. And we've said everything with our lower body has rotated to the target. And we just said we want to separate our shoulders from our hips. So our hips going to the target, we need to separate that. So that means the chest, the shoulders, need to continue facing the same way they started. With all five of these guys being right-handed, that means their chest remains facing into third base dugout, while the hips have rotated home. So if we clear all those arrows up and we take each of these guys one by one and kind of make them bigger, we'll watch Garrett Cole in full speed, and then in slow motion we will pause him at that foot strike position. Boom. So again, we want to watch this back hip, this back knee, and this back foot. And we're going to rewind to right before he gets that foot strike to occur. And we're going to watch how this back hip is starting here, the back knee is starting here, and the back foot is still holding its ground on the pitching rubber. And we're going to be able to see how much rotation. Oh, wow, that got aggressive. how much rotation is actually occurring. Boom. 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 Let's take that to our next guy. Spencer Strider. Again, we'll watch it in real time and then in slow motion. We'll pause Strider at his foot strike position. Boom. Okay, we can see back hip is here. Back knee is all the way turned over. Back foot all the way turned over. We rotate, or rather, we unrotate that and we take him back. And we can see when he begins rotating just how much everything gets to rotate forward. Then his foot lands in the ground. Lower body rotates first. Boom. Then the foot gets into the ground at foot strike. We have now successfully separated our lower half, which is facing the target, from our upper half, which is still facing the dugout. The more of this upper lower half separation, or hip shoulder separation, the more of that we achieve, the more power we're going to create, and the amount of stress that gets put on our arm is going to decrease. Let's take this to our next guy, Class A. Again, we'll watch it in real time and then in slow motion. Pause him at foot strike. So boom, there's the foot in the ground. We can see that belt buckle going to that target while the chest still continues to face third base dugout. How did the belt buckle get to the target while the chest remains in its same position? Well, it's because that back knee rotated forward and we were able to drive through our big toe. We were able to rotate our foot around our big toe, which drives our entire body forward. Drives our entire body forward. The rotation of the knee and the drive through the big toe, the folding over of the foot over the toe, rolling my foot over my big toe, helps get everything to drive forward. And then once the lower body drives forward, now it's time for the upper body to drive forward. Go to our next guy, Dylan Cease. Again, first one will be full speed. And this next one will be slow motion. We'll pause it at foot strike. Boom. We can see that same thing, driving through that big toe, folding his foot over his big toe, extending his leg through that big toe, reaching away from the pitching rubber through our big toe. So that way our back knee can rotate forward, along with our back hip can rotate forward. Boom. Boom. And then, as we can see, boom. Our 3 points of our back leg is the hip, the knee, and the foot. We want to be strong in here so we can send power out through here. Bam. And then once we send that power through with the lower half, now it's time for the upper half. And where's our final guy? Joe Ryan. You guys already know the drill. Starting full speed. And then we'll go slow-mo. Pausing it at foot strike, where we can see again driving through that big toe, rotating that knee all the way down and around, getting that back hip to drive itself forward, which gets the belt buckle to the target, which is our catcher. All meanwhile, our chest, our upper body has separated itself from the lower body. Lower body is going to the target. The upper body is fighting to not do that, which means stay back. So that way, once this lower body creates all this power, now we can send it up to the upper body to send all that power out. All right, what we're discussing next is the front leg. As we see, got this nice, good alignment of the hip, knee, and foot going to our target. Everyone's going to have slightly different angles in their lead leg. All right, but the important part is that we rotate this front leg just like we're rotating the back leg. And we can see that the knees are almost synchronized up, synced up, synced up. That the knees are synced up. When the back knee's rotating, so is the front knee. Everyone's going to come down the mound a little different, but regardless, that front knee, that front foot has got to rotate to our target. Once that foot gets in the ground, we have taken energy and we have sent it down this mound. We have sent the energy from the back foot to the front foot. And now we got to get this energy from the front foot up to our upper body and then out our upper body down that mound. And this front leg is a huge piece of that. We have to make sure that this front leg becomes a firm, fixed point that we can drive over and rotate around. We need to be able to drive our trunk, which is from our shoulders to our hips, our trunk, we have to drive over and around our front leg. We're going to be able to do that the fastest and the most aggressive when this front leg is firm. Just like our front leg gets firm when we swing, we need to be throwing on a firm front leg. More guys than not achieve that firmness in that front leg by taking the leg and locking out, stiffening up, or straightening that leg. So this angle that we have here with Dylan Cease, we'll see straightens out, stiffens up, locks out. And when that leg does that and turns into a firm point, that trunk is able to rotate itself in front of the leg, and then also around that leg. So because that front leg got firm, it stiffened up, it locked out, it straightened up, that allows the upper body to get slammed down, sent down, accelerated forward, as the arm is also then sent down. And then we can finish that rotation around. We'll come over here to Class A and we'll look at that same thing. So here's that angle in that front leg. We need to now be able to get that trunk in front of the leg and then around the leg. So we'll watch and see how it doesn't lock all the way out like C's front leg did, but it is firm. There's firmness there, meaning the knee does not drift forward. The knee, in fact, does some of that locking out, locking out, locking out. Okay. Come up here to Garrett Cole. Front leg angle. This has got to become firm so we can get the trunk in front and then around the front side. So we can see Garrett Cole fully locks that thing out. Starting here, gets to there. And what's that helping? That's helping get the trunk out in front. Out in front. Down the mound. And then ultimately, what else? Around. And then Joe Ryan. Same thing. That angle, that front leg needs to become firm so we can drive that trunk out in front and then down and around. And we can see not a full lockout guy, but a knee is not going to keep drifting forward. So that way it is firm. Now it's locked out. And now I can rotate around it. Around it. Around it. But one of the things we're able to see here is just how out in front through that last part of that ball being in our hands and that first part of that arm turning over into pronation to decelerate, that head to the foot is. That head to the foot is. Head to the foot is. Getting ourselves to rotate out in front. Out in front. Rotate forward. Being able to rotate forward. That's all because that front leg becoming a firm, fixed point that we can drive our chest down to help accelerate our arm out in front. And then we can see the same thing. The Strider is a lockout guy. Stiffening that thing up. Straightening it up. So that way the trunk can get sent forward. Boom. Foot strike, he's here. So as well, we can see getting himself out over that front leg because that front leg became firm. It became a fixed point that we can get out in front of and then also be able to rotate around. All right, so let's now discuss upper body at foot strike here. So again, we're looking at this part of our body. And the first thing we want to think about is our throwing arm. We want to have a 90-ish degree angle in both our elbow and our armpit. We're looking for this glove to be at our chest, straight in front of us to our target. We don't want this glove getting outside of our shoulder. If this glove's getting outside of our front shoulder is going to start to open up, and now we're not going to be able to rotate out in front as well because we'll be tilted and our rotation will be on a slight axis. Again, that chest, like we've been talking about, has not rotated. And obviously, head looking straight over top of our shoulder down the barrel. Pull that, our quad view here up with these guys. Get them all back to foot strike. Okay, so as we can see, everyone's glove's in a slightly different position, but the overall theme is what? Glove is in line with chest. Glove is in line with chest. Glove is in line with chest. Glove is in line with his upper body. I don't want to say chest because chest is up here. It's more in line with his midsection. None of the gloves are outside of their bodies. None of their gloves have opened their upper bodies up, and that is why they were able to create tremendous upper-lower half separation. Not just because the lower body rotated itself properly and on time, but it's because the upper body did not rotate with it. And the easiest way for the upper body to start to rotate with the lower body is by that glove swooping outside of our body, swooping outside of our shoulder, which would then start the shoulder to swoop out, which would then start to bring the back shoulder forward, which now starts to make the chest, instead of facing third base dugout, starts to face the on deck circle. So now the hips, which are going this way, and the shoulders were going this way for ultimate separation, now the hips that are facing this way, the shoulders are facing this way. Less separation, which means less velo and extra stress on the arm to make that throw, which is the complete opposite of what we're trying to achieve through our good, clean mechanics. So we can see with that glove in that good position, the glove is just going to hold there as the body rotates to it. The glove will hold there as the body of the backside rotates to it. The glove will hold there as the body rotates through it. The glove will hold there as the body rotates through it. Boom. 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 As long as the lower body takes care of business, leading into foot strike, and the upper body has done its job of staying back, everything just happens on its own. But that's why it's so critical that the lower body does its thing on time. And on time meaning by the time that foot gets in the ground, and doing its thing meaning fully rotated as much as we possibly can. And the upper body does its thing leading into foot strike, which is stay closed. Do not open up. Do not let my glove open my shoulder, and keep my arm loaded back. I don't rotate the throw until after the foot gets into the ground. My lower body rotates to get the foot into the ground. Then my upper body rotates after the foot is in the ground. Now it just becomes how fast, violent, and explosive can I make them? All right, dude, we're just going to let your video play through here 2 times. First time would be all one motion. Second time, we'll pause it at foot strike so we can just see some of the things that your body has gotten you into versus all the things that we just discussed with the big leaguers. Okay, so boom, foot strike. Like we talked, we can see that back foot is driven through that big toe. That back knee is rotated around. We just gotten that back hip to drive forward real well there. We can see from the front view that front knee and front foot are also getting rotated around, getting us into foot strike, creating that upper lower half separation or that hip shoulder separation because the hips and the lower body are rotating to the target while the upper body is still facing third base dugout. We find ourselves in that good 90-ish degree angle, and that glove is in line with our body, which has kept our shoulder closed off, which allows our head to be looking down the barrel of our shoulder, creating really good upper lower half separation, which is going to help us increase our velo while we also decrease the stress on our arm. Coming out of that foot strike, we can see that front leg stabilizes and gets firm for us to be able to rotate down and around. All in all, dude, body's looking pretty darn clean. The one thing I want us to think about is driving this trunk down more through release, down more through release. The more we can send this trunk out in front and down, the more acceleration our body is creating that the arm can follow, meaning maximizing power. your body, the time it balls out, has only driven itself forward that much. Not a whole lot of degrees of using our body to accelerate ourselves out in front. So 2 guys we're going to use for you, both high velo guys. Back him up. It's hard to see when foot strike occurs because of our ginormous new bases they got in the big leagues. We'll say it right there. Let's bring him back so that way his upper body, boom, aligns there, just like where yours did at your foot strike. Boom to boom. And now we'll allow him to get to release. Somewhere in between these 2 frames, we'll say right here. And we'll just draw his angle from his hip, or his shoulder rather, back in. So we can see the amount that his body was able to power through that throw. How much more out in front he's able to get versus you're able to get. And then if we just forget about the drawing for a second and just brought it to include, we can see just that difference between sending that trunk out in front versus a lot more of, I mean, we're rotating it, but we're just not getting it out in front as much. All right, so let's get our lines back to where they need to be so they're lined up. You there. Merriweather. There. And let's get Johan, who's got the most 100-mile-an-hour pitches regularly the last, oh boy, I don't know how many seasons, at least 2, this season and the season prior. Okay, so we pull him back there. Okay, and then play him through to release. Getting himself, I didn't draw that as well as I wanted to. More there. Okay, so not as much as Merriweather, but we can see that degree. What we're going to really be able to see is how much it continues to get accelerated down before it comes back up. All the way down. All the way down while we go around. Keep it going down. Almost if this was flat, this is real close to being flat. Same thing. It's out. Keep going down with it. Keep bringing that power down. Everything else, dude, we're looking strong. All right, so we're going to let your video play through here twice. First time would be all one motion. Second time we'll pause it at foot strike so you can see some of the things that we talked about with the big leaguers and compare that to what your body looks like. All right, so we're at foot strike here. we can see that the hips, or the belt buckle rather, is going towards that target, and that's because the knee has rotated and we are driving through that big toe. One of the things we can also notice is just how out in front your head is compared to the center of your body. The angle of our trunk is already leaning towards the target. So if I'm already leaning towards the target by the time my front foot hits the ground, I'm not going to be able to send my chest or my trunk down much further than that to help power my throw. If instead my body was more straight up and down at foot strike, or more in this type of position when the foot gets into the ground, then you will have a lot more of your trunk able to go out in front to help your arm power out in front. But because that trunk and that chest and that chin is starting to fall and lean forward early, when it comes time to throw, we're not going to be able to get it much further out in front. Meaning we're losing out on some of our power potential. So we need to think this position that we're in here, where this chin is fighting to stay behind the belly button, we're keeping ourselves really well closed off. And let me rephrase that. We're doing a really good job keeping our upper body closed off. It's just around this point in time, as that lower body begins to rotate forward, we can see what else is beginning to rotate forward. The upper body. The upper body. So now the upper body has begun to rotate early. And if the upper body is rotating, it's going to also want to go forward. So we need to think about keeping this chin behind this belly button, keeping our nose behind our belly button, up until the moment our foot gets in the ground. Then we can send everything forward. That's going to be easier achieved if we're able to keep the shoulders back, not rotating while the lower body rotates. As that foot is getting in the ground, we want to be staying here. We want to be in this position with our upper body when our lower body gets into this position. And we can just see those slight differences of how much our upper body is starting to open early. And now that we are no longer here, but we are now here, our rotation is not going to be able to come through here as easily. It's going to come more around here. And we'll see coming out of that just a little bit of lost direction. And then that's going to really lead to that finish that takes us kind of aggressively falling over here. It's just because everything has been going over here, taking us just slightly outside of ourselves. So then when we throw, we kind of keep getting pulled out that way. So what I want us to think about to help us with this is that there is a wall right here. And that wall goes from the pitching rubber all the way down to the bottom of the mound. And this wall has got lava dripping down it. Okay. Let me start this here. Boom. Okay. Here's our wall. We want to stay up against the wall. We don't want to lean into the wall. We definitely cannot knock the wall over. And what we're going to notice while we go through this here is that we do a good job staying up against the wall, staying up against the wall, staying up against the wall, staying up against the wall. Uh-oh. At foot strike, we're starting to break down the wall. And now as we rotate, we're going to end up continuing to go into that wall a little bit. And now we've created a door in that wall. We want to think about staying up against this wall as long as we can, so that way all that energy gets sent out here, maximizing the velocity and also minimizing stress that goes through the arm while we make this throw. So someone that you start off like a lot is DeGrom. Obviously, he's in the windup here, but I get both of you out. Out. Okay. Backside leg, very similar positions. Let me take the ground back a little bit. Boom, right there. Your glove is coming across a lot more than his, but I like what you're working with here. And both of your throwing arms, the ball is just falling out of the glove. And then we'll take you through there. We'll get the DeGrom in through that same or similar position and point in time. Right there. And then getting your foot into the ground so we can just notice that little bit of starting to open up plus the tilt. Versus DeGrom getting that foot in the ground. Shoulders are still squared and tall. What else can we notice? Because this front shoulder hasn't begun to open up yet, like yours has, his arm can still be retracted behind his back still, while your shoulder, or rather, sorry, your arm, your elbow, is beginning to come through. We look at from the front view here in this window right here, your throwing arm is beginning to come through, come through, come through. Why is it coming through? Because the front shoulder is opening up, which pulls the back shoulder forward. Boom, boom, boom. DeGrom is keeping his in line. Shoulder stay in line, foot's in the ground. Shoulder stay in line, foot's in the ground. So now when he goes to throw, he can send that trunk down. And not only is it down, but it's going to that target, to that target, to that target, just a little bit more efficient than yours is kind of just a little out, a little out. It's not bad, but this is where we start to gain power. This is where we start to really become that pitcher, because a lot of the things that your body does, dude, is very pitcher-like. Like all of this here, great stuff. All of this stuff here, great stuff. Nice high leg lift, coming out of it awesome. Like that's why I was asking you if pitcher was like your primary position, because your body does a lot of great stuff all the way up to right here. We just need to be able to get that foot in the ground so that way we don't open up a little early. We're not tilting forward. We think about that wall. And we're going to be heavily contributing on the pitching side of things this year. If I got some more to Grom to be able to show some more of that staying in line, we can look from the backside. Right, and just how he's finishing that throw really tells us that he's not tilting out to the side because he's so strong and stable on this one leg here. Boom, and he's just standing there. Versus yours of kind of leaning Tower of Pisa over here. You get another DeGrom angle. And then seeing that at full speed. And trying to be tall. So then we can, boom, get out in front. But all in all, dude, we do a lot of things good. A lot of good things here. All right, so we're going to let your video play through here twice. First time, all one motion. Second time, we'll be pausing at foot strikes, so that way you can compare and contrast things from which we just talked about with the big leaguers. I did think your tempo was awesome. Getting that leg up and getting yourself going was at a great rate. So here we are at foot strike. We can see backside knee is really trying to rotate fully around that front side leg, specifically that front side knee and foot, doing a really good job of popping that self at that last second to get it into the ground. Unfortunately, we can see that front shoulder and glove just opening ourselves just a little early. So one of our cues that we want to be thinking about is we got to keep our glove closed for longer. Closed meaning here is foot strike. So that's a bad. It's hard to draw a straight line up from a trackpad. That's better. Okay, we need to keep this glove on the closed side of this line for longer. So when the glove comes out, you're in a thumb down, palm out position. That's fantastic. That's what we're looking for. Thumb down, palm out positions the elbow in a way, the elbow gets positioned in a certain way with a thumbs down, palm out position that it kind of curls this shoulder in, kind of tucks this shoulder in, which is awesome. That keeps us closed. As soon as we lose that thumbs down, palm out position, as soon as we start to lose that thumb down, palm out position like we've lost here, we're going to start to open that glove. And your glove is opening too early because once it starts to open, it's going to continue to open until the foot gets in the ground. So we can just see that loopy path that it takes just doesn't end in time. So if it's going to take this much to finish it, and it's going to go from here to here, that's the distance, and we want the finish to be here, that means we got to either keep the glove over here for longer, or we got to somehow get it out to here. We already get the glove to get across our body in an extreme way. It's going to be hard to expect us to get it any more over here. So that means we need to keep that thumbs down, palm out position for longer. So that way the elbow is in a position that keeps that front shoulder slightly curled in. Because if that front shoulder is slightly curled in, there's no way that front shoulder can start to curl out, curl out, curl out prior to this front foot get fully into the ground. So Q is thumbs down, palm out for longer. Ride that glove out. Think the movie 300. Hold, hold, hold. Just keep holding that glove side in that thumbs down, palm out, elbow up, front shoulder has that slight curled in, and just hold it out there. Once it gets to here, just let it stay here. We don't need to continuously open it up. We don't need to continuously open up that arm. We don't need to continuously extend the elbow out, reaching the arm straight. We can keep it in this flexion here and have the whole body continue to go out with that same flexion. That same flexion for a little bit longer before now we start to open it up. So that way now by the time that foot's in the ground, that glove is here instead of here. So that way we're looking down our front shoulder instead of down over our chest, over our pec. We want to be looking down the barrel of our shoulder. So we're just losing a little bit of our upper lower half separation, which is minimizing a little bit of our power. Plus the shoulder opening up slightly is going to minimize our command consistency a little bit as well. Some of this can get cleaned up if we aren't taking so long to get that foot in the ground. And we know it's not so long because of time, because you're working quick. It's so long because you're traveling so far. We have the ability to get the lower body rotated in a shorter window of time, meaning your toes are here. We could get the toes to land here and still get that lower half to rotate just as much as it is now. Prime example of that is Zach Gallen. We watch him here. Boom. Getting that foot in the ground. Still able to get everything rotated, but that stride distance is a lot shorter. Not feeling like you have to reach out here, out here to be able to rotate our body, our lower half. But let's think about once we get like here, let's start rotating instead of waiting to here before we start to rotate. Because once we do start to rotate, the foot's in the ground. The foot's in the ground. The foot's getting in the ground. The foot's getting in the ground. So if we started that rotation here, that foot could be in the ground already. And look where that glove's at. A lot more by the chest. Look where we're looking down, the barrel of our shoulder. And we could have all of this already completed if we just rotated it a little bit earlier. So we just need to think about firing that lower half sooner, so that way we don't have to stride out as far to complete the rotation of that lower half. Everything else, though, looking good. We're able to get that energy out in front. Like I said, that aggressiveness in the beginning of the delivery. Obviously, we could be a little bit firmer with this front side, like we talked about in those big league videos. It doesn't necessarily need to lock out, right? It doesn't need to necessarily straighten out and stiffen out to be here, but we definitely don't want that knee to be drifting forward, 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 forward. We're losing out on power because of that. So we need to think, if that knee's not going to lock out, it needs to at least hit this wall and not go forward anymore. So then it's just the upper body getting to go forward. And we can see that that knee just kind of drifts forward a little bit on you at the end. Versus a lockout, which is the extreme opposite of what your body is slightly starting to do a little bit. But all in all, we're creating the energy, we're creating the aggressiveness. Now it's just a matter of being able to keep ourselves closed and be able to use that on time and not waste any of it off to the side, leaking out. But all in all, a lot of good things going on. All right, so we're going to let your video play here 2 times. First time, all one motion. Second time, we're going to pause it at foot strike, so that way you can see the positions your body's is getting into versus the positions the big leaguers' bodies were getting into. Okay, so here we are at foot strike. We can see the back foot is trying to rotate itself over that big toe, but it hasn't quite gotten to yet. We can see the back knee is rotating. But because the back foot has not turned over, the knee cannot help get the back hip to rotate forward on its own. And that's why the back hip is just barely able to rotate forward. Once this back foot is able to continue to turn itself over that big toe, that will help the knee continue to rotate itself over, which will then ultimately help get that back hip to drive forward. However, none of that is going to be possible if our front leg is blocking ourselves off in this extreme of positions. Meaning, no matter how aggressively or completely we try to open this door, if it's got the lock on the door and that lock is sealed up tight, we can't come through. So that means we need to do more rotating of this front leg before that front foot strikes the ground. Right now, we can see we get very little rotation out of that front knee, out of that front foot, before the foot hits the ground. And in fact, we can see how that front foot hits on the inside part of our foot first, and then it rolls. Then it rolls. It hits the inside of the foot, then it rolls to the rest of the foot. But we can't throw that baseball with that leg in that position very well. And that's why we get the upper body trying to kind of tilt in this way, trying to get us back over to this way, because that leg position has prevented us from being more up here. So because the knee has kept us this way, the upper body at the last possible second try to yank itself this way to get more into this position. So we need to think about getting our lead leg here rotated with the back leg. When the back knee rotates, the front knee rotates. When the back foot rotates, the front foot rotates. And like we said, the back foot isn't able to really rotate before that front foot hits the ground all the way. Once we come out of foot strike, then it's trying to really rotate. Then it's really trying to rotate. And as it's really trying to rotate, that's also when the back hip is starting to come through. But unfortunately, that's also when we're trying to throw this arm forward. And I say throw this arm forward because our trunk, which is in a good tall position right here, right now, doesn't get out in front of us a whole lot before that ball's out of our hands. So I'm going to show some examples of some low arm slot guys. Both happen to be left-handed, so I know it's not what you are, but that is neither here nor there, does not matter. So just watch that front leg. Notice how much that front foot, front knee rotate before it hits the ground. Is his stride across his body like yours? Yes. It is. But he's still able to get the foot rotated and get that kneecap towards the target. Right? So we look and say, your back toe is here, your front heel is here. Right? We do that same thing here. Back toe and heel down here. Right? So about the same of direction of stride, but we can just see the big difference in the direction that this is going versus the direction that this is going. He's got that kneecap going to that target. Your kneecap is going to like on deck circle of third base dugout. So we need to think about getting that front leg to rotate more. Specifically, we want to think about the knee. And it's going to be easier to get the knee if we think about getting the toes to get more rotated as well. So that way your foot is more in line with the catcher, which will help your knee get more in line with the catcher, which will help clear the space for that back hip to be able to come through, which will help increase our upper lower half separation, which will increase our power and decrease that stress on our arm. Take Coop here from the side. We'll be able to see how much out in front he gets. First, we'll play it with full speed and then slow motion after that. Okay, so foot in the ground, and we can see that good angle to the target versus your knee just getting there, versus getting it rotated all the way around. So that way that back hip has that ability to go to the target which gets us way out in front. Way out in front through release. Versus your body only able to get you out to here. We want to use our chest, use our body to help accelerate the throw versus just trying to hawk our throw as hard as we can. And that's why one of the things I mentioned to you was we want to think about not just being a thrower up there, but being a pitcher, right? And that's one of the things is not just how fast can I whip my upper body side to side, but how can I feed my upper body power? So we want to think about getting that foot down, then start to rotate. We can see the shoulders are starting to want to rotate a little early. So now by the time that foot gets into the ground, our shoulders have already begun to open up. We want to be in this position when that foot hits the ground, not starting to lose some of our power. And once that shoulder starts to open up, we're not able to rotate out in front as much. We start to have to rotate off to the side a little bit, taking away some of our power and taking away some of our repeatability in our command. Harrison, okay, same thing. Getting that lower body, that front foot to rotate all the way to the target. And again, he's another guy who's got that low arm slot like you, but just how much out in front he's able to get through his release versus the tallness or the lack of out in front you're able to get that chest. Just got this big angle forward versus tall angle upwards. Using his body to create 95 plus from the left side down low. One of the best K-9 guys in minor league ball, who's made 3 big league starts now for the Giants. Just got to get that chest out in front. Extend that body out in front. All right, so we're going to let your video play through here twice. First time will be all one motion. Second time, we're going to pause it at foot strike. So that way you can compare the things you just learned and saw with the big leaguers to what you see your body doing and looking like. Okay, so here we are at foot strike. Lower body has done a pretty good job of rotating itself into this position here. The front leg especially has done a good job. The backside is a little late meaning it hasn't been able to complete its rotation. Where maybe back knee is maybe 55, 65% rotated, and the back foot really hasn't done anything yet, which means the back hip has not been able to do really anything yet. It won't be until after this point does the back hip start to go forward, and that's because the back foot starts to turn over, which helps get that back knee to finish its rotation all the way. So the back side needs to rotate sooner. It knows what to do. It just doesn't have the time to do it because it starts so late. However, that's not what I want to concern ourselves with. The first thing I want you to think about is we're starting tall. Let's stay tall. because when that foot gets down, we're tall. Okay, so we're tall here. Now we're not tall. We're hunched over. But when this foot gets down, I'm back to being tall. So I've just wasted time and energy and the ability to stay consistent by adding a movement that has no bearing on my delivery. It's a wasted movement. So a wasted movement is just time and direction that I am just adding that could go wrong. I'm trying to make my delivery as simple as possible, so that way there's as little things that I have to control, so I have the highest chance of repeatability and success. So if I'm going to start tall, there's no need to get down to here just to have to lift myself back up to here, because as we see, I was down here, now I'm going up, 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 up. What's to stop me from continuing this path to going over here now? There's not really anything. And that's why as we start to rotate, now we're rotating more this way, because we're just following this shoulder curling out. And why is it doing that? Because it had to go from way over here back up and around my throw. So we can clean that up by just starting tall, staying tall throughout our descent of the mound instead of hunching over as we're descending down the mound. So start tall, stay tall. The bigger thing is our arm path. We need to clean this up. It's big, loopy, and ultimately draggy, which is going to add tremendous stress on our arm. Your arm is going through like a circle. It's at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, you've taken your arm through this big old circle, and again, what's to stop it from continuing that? There isn't a whole lot. And now we've gotten to here, and now we've gotten to even here. And like we talked about at foot strike, we're looking for that 90-90, which is close to here. We're a little tighter than that, because straight up would be there. But we just created this very long arm that has a very short window of time to work in. So I'm not even taking anyone specific. It's just these 5 guys that are still down here in the dock that I've been working with the other guys with. So we're going to take all 5 of these guys up. All of them have different characteristics in their deliveries that were unique to a different one of your teammates. None of these guys have anything really in common with one another. But we're just going to watch the arm path. So ball is about to come out of the glove from the center of the body. And then the ball falls out of his glove. Ball extends back just behind his back foot. And then it's up. And then it's up. Right? There wasn't this huge reach back here with his arm. His elbow is bent here. Elbow. Ball falls out of the glove. And now it's going behind his back. But the ball never extends like this. It never works its way out like that. That's not efficient. That's a long path to go. We're trying to make our arm efficient. Ball falls out of the glove. And now the elbow is bringing it up. The arm is not extending out. It's the elbow coming up. So when he's here and they're across the body, these elbows are bent. These elbows are bent. So that way, from elbow to shoulder, yes, is straight out. Shoulder to elbow, yes, is straight back. But then elbow to hand is over here. Elbow to hand is over here. It's never getting elbow to hand, elbow to hand. Ball falls out of the glove. Elbow brings it up. Then it flips up. Rip for a foot strike. Ball falls out of the glove. Elbow brings it up. Flips up right before foot strike. So noticing we get all these guys to that part of hand separation where everything's kind of on a level plane with itself. Okay, we look at all those guys at that position there, just how close their front foot is to the ground. We take you to that point in which everything's in that level plane. You haven't even begun to drive yourself down that mound yet. So now you have all this time where that hand is going to start to come above the shoulder. Your hand's going to start to come above the shoulder. Boom. We don't want our hand to come above our shoulder until right as that foot's hitting the ground. This movement right here that your arm's doing, boom, boom, we want to be into the ground. But we don't get in the ground until now, and that's why that arm gets that extra movement in here rather than being here. And that's where we add extra stress into here. So we just need to think about making the arm path more compact, shorten it up. We can also think right now you're pointing swords. We don't want to be sword fighting. We're not extending our arm straight out. We want to have this straight out, but then from here to here, we want that over here. And this can be straight out, but from elbow to wrist, we want over here. We're not looking to reach our arms all the way out. And I got a whole video that talks about arm path that I would highly recommend you go and watch. It goes into even more detail than that regarding all different types of arm slots and body builds and deliveries. But you're able to see the commonalities between all the different paths that those arms take. And this right here is what we need to eliminate. We need to load up our back by using our elbow. You're loading up your back by trying to use your hand. So we're going to be doing a lot of arm path drills with you. All right, so we're going to have your video play 2 times here. First time is going to be all one motion. The second time we're going to stop it at foot strike, so that way we can compare and contrast the things you saw and learned with the big league videos to what you're seeing with your delivery. Okay, so there we are at foot strike. So we take this back a little bit. We can see that knee is starting to rotate. That foot's starting to go through that big toe, and that back hip is starting to rotate forward. But it's just not a whole lot. And that's because the back foot just hasn't completed its rotation yet. Once it completes its rotation, the knee rotates more, and that hip really goes forward, really goes forward, really goes forward. Well, we need that hip to really go forward before this front foot hits the ground. So that way, when the hip's really going forward, that's sending us into the ground, not already being in the ground while that hip tries to go forward. The front leg, though, does a real good job in its rotation. We can see that by looking over here. Does a really good job. You see that front shoulder is trying not to open early. It's trying not to. It's trying not to. That glove's holding tight. It's doing a good job there. But we can see that that backside arm really wants to start to come through. Really wants to start rotating. Wants to start to rotate. And we don't want that yet. We're trying to have that still be almost going back still when that front leg hits the ground. Because now that back hip and back shoulder are both, the back shoulder and the back hip are now both going forward at the same time. And when we talk about that upper lower half separation, we need the lower half to go, then the upper half to go. And right now we got kind of both going at the same time. However, we're not really going to concern ourselves with that because first, like we talked about, we need to clean up our set position. If we're starting in a less than, let me not even use that. If we're starting in a position that's not ideal for creating power and creating consistency, then it's not a good set position for us. If we're in a position that we can't control the same movements each and every time to start us, every movement after is a coin toss if it's going to happen the way we want it to or not. But if step 1 can be done exactly the way I want it to, step 2 is a very good chance for that same thing to happen again. But if step 1 is not done very well, there's not a good chance that step 2 all of a sudden is going to get done well, because step 1 influences step 2. So if I can make my step 1 the same every single time, I can start to make my step 2 the same every single time. And now step 3 has a great chance to be the same every time. And I'm going to keep stacking that up until now the end result, step whatever it may be, if that's the same every single time, now my command is being very consistent. And when we got ourselves in a less than ideal starting position, it's hard to have that step 1, step 2, step 3 consistency. So just remember, we want to start tall, stay tall. We want to start strong, stay strong. We don't want to be hunched over. Only the back knee is bent. The front knee is not. And in this second position, or the side view, was our second set where we were able to reinforce that straight leg, bent leg, weight back. And in this one, we can see both knees are bent and the weight is more in the middle of the body and we're really hunched over. So start tall, stay tall. We don't necessarily want to be in this big old hunched, folded over position. Because when we go to throw and that foot gets down on the ground, look where you're now at. You're now going this way. Why? Because we had to take this head that was over here and we had to get it back to straight in line. So it was going this way. It had to go and stand itself up, and now what's to stop it from continuing to go beyond that? There isn't anything because the foot's not in the ground yet. So now it's going to keep opening up, and now we're rotating here a lot more than we are able to rotate to the target. Down out in front versus more side to side. We also need to take a look at our arm path here and just notice that it's getting the hand is leading the way. We don't want the hand to lead the way. We want the elbow to lead the way. We're swooping our arm back behind us, and now the shoulder is going to have to kind of drag it forward and catch it up. We don't want to have that arm get into this huge circle that we're creating here. Because remember, when we get in the foot strike, we want to have that 90-ish degree angle in our armpit, which you have. And then we want to have a 90-ish degree angle in our elbow. And we have this really big obtuse angle in our elbow. And it's because the path that our arm is taking sends it so far behind us that as it's trying to flip up into external rotation, as it's trying to flip up, it's doing it so far behind our body that it's going to create a little bit of drag, which is going to increase a little bit of the arm stress. Little bit extra going on through here. So we want to think compact. We don't want to think necessarily short. We just want to make it compact, right? If you were going to knock someone out with a punch, we wouldn't want to be swinging our arm way behind us straight like that. We want to cock it, have our elbow bent a little bit, right? So no matter how far it goes back, it's because the elbow is taking it back, not because the hand's taking it back. So let's take a look at some of these big leaguers here. So ball is about to come out of the glove from the center of the body. And then the ball falls out of his glove. Ball extends back just behind his back foot. And then it's up. And then it's up. Right? There wasn't this huge reach back here with his arm. His elbow is bent here. Elbow. Ball falls out of the glove. And now it's going behind his back. But the ball never extends like this. It never works its way out like that. That's not efficient. That's a long path to go. We're trying to make our arm efficient. Ball falls out of the glove. And now the elbow is bringing it up. The arm is not extending out. It's the elbow coming up. So when he's here and they're across the body, these elbows are bent. These elbows are bent. So that way, from elbow to shoulder, yes, is straight out. Shoulder to elbow, yes, is straight back. But then elbow to hand is over here. Elbow to hand is over here. It's never getting elbow to hand, elbow to hand. Ball falls out of the glove. Elbow brings it up. Then it flips up. Rip for a foot strike. Ball falls out of the glove. Elbow brings it up. flips up right before foot strike. All right, so we're gonna let your video play through here twice. The first time will be all one motion. The second time will be paused at front foot strike, so that way you can see the position your body's gotten into compared to those big leaguers we just got done talking about. What I also want you to notice is just the side view was our first set and the front view was our second set. In our second set, we talked about getting that leg up quicker so we can get our body going to the target more aggressively. And we can just see how much further along in your leg lift in this first delivery over here we are by the time this delivery over here even begins. So boom. This leg is almost all the way up when this delivery just starts to begin. So boom, that's the top of your leg lift right there. And we got it all the way up to there before this delivery even began. Yet somehow that heel hits the ground at the same exact time here. Meaning this delivery over here was faster, more aggressive than this delivery. Meaning this delivery has a lot better chance to create more power in our throw. So one of the big things we got to take away and remember is we need to be thinking about getting that leg up quick so we can get the hips going to our target soon. Get it up, get it going. We want to start with energy so we can maximize energy. If we start with almost no energy, it's hard to get to maximum energy in the short window of time that we have to operate. So that's your first cue. Get it up, get it going. That should be on your mind as you're coming set. Before you lift that leg is, let's get this thing up and let's get ourselves going. So we'll pause you now at that foot strike. Again, that heel hits first, then the foot gets fully into the ground. So like we discussed, we want to have that belt buckle going to that target, which we see here, while we also have the shoulder staying squared, which we can see has not been able to occur. We have not been able to keep the shoulders from beginning to rotate prior to that foot getting all the way in the ground. All the way in the ground. Yes, the knee is rotated a bunch. Yes, the big foot, or the toe, rather the back foot has rotated over the big toe a lot. The back hip has really driven towards the target. We've gotten our lower half about as much rotated to the target as we possibly can. Unfortunately, it took us a super long distance, meaning a lot of time to get everything with the lower body rotated. And it took so much time before that foot got into the ground. We had to travel such a far distance to get that foot in the ground that the upper half just could not hold this line any longer. It's like we're holding. Holy smokes, we still have to hold? Oh my goodness, I can't hold no more. We're going to have to start rotating. And now we've just minimized some of our upper lower half separation, meaning we have minimized some of our maximum power potential, and we are just adding a little bit of extra stress to our throw. So what we need to think about is the difference between lower half rotation and lower half drive. You are driving your body a lot more forward than you have the capability of. What's a good word here I could use? You're driving your body out a lot further than you currently have the ability to support. We don't need to stride this far in order to get the lower half to rotate around. And a good example of that would be Zach Gallen, who's having a fantastic season. So we watch that in slow motion here. And we're going to see that he's going to get his lower body really nice and rotated at foot strike. Take that back a couple small frames here. Okay. He's at foot strike. Everything has gotten itself turned over, rotated, and rotated forward. But that distance, he didn't have to go super far out there to get there. One of the things that we could use to know how far you've had to reach out there is the flexion or the degree of the bend in the knee. This extreme flexion in the knee here is a lot to have to handle. We're really low to the ground. We're really squatting deep. We can even see how close that knee is to the ground versus the distance here. So what we want to think about is we don't need to be striding so far out in front of ourselves in order to get our lower half rotated, lower half rotated, lower half rotated. We want to think about trying to get that lower half to rotate in a smaller window of distance. Not feeling like we have to reach this foot so far out in front to be able to get there. Another guy that we can use to demonstrate that example is Gratterol. Boom. And all in all, very compact short stride for a guy of his build. And then we just compare that to you. And obviously the camera angle and the view and the zoom is going to mess with our distances there. But just simply looking at these two here. Oops. We can just see how much further your back toe is to the back shoulder, to the front shoulder, to the front knee, to the front foot is covering a big distance comparative to a more extreme opposite end of the spectrum as you. You're on this far end of the spectrum and Gratterol is on this far end of that side of the spectrum. Not saying we need to go from here to there, but we need to think about going from here to there. And in reality, that'll get us from here to that good middle ground. But we're going to have to think about it being stupid short just to get it to bring itself into like right here. Okay. The final thing we want to think about is we can notice that this front foot is opened when it lands. That's going to also allow the opportunity for our energy to get sent this way a little bit rather than being sent this way. So we can just see how that whole leg now is going that way, collapsing us that way, losing just some of our posture. So what we want to think about is this foot landing straight or even closed off some. So since your foot wants to be open, we're going to want to first try to get it to be straight, which means you're going to have to think that you're landing closed to actually get it to be straight. That way we can send more of our power to our target and not have some of our power get leaked off to the side there, which is also going to minimize a little bit of our command. But we have a real good, nice high leg lift. especially in our delivery number 2 when we got it up fast and we got ourselves going. It's creating better power for us. Now it's just thinking less trying to stride as far as I can to create power, and instead thinking I'm going to rotate my lower body as fast as I can to create that power. Doing that is going to help the upper half not be so opened at foot strike, which will help us increase our upper lower half separation. This would be achieved because we won't spend, let's say, and this is not realistic, but just easy for math, we're not going to spend 2 seconds striding out when our upper body can only stay closed for 1.5 seconds. We'll have our lower body be able to get that foot in the ground in 1.5 seconds. So that way, once that lower half is in the ground, boom, those shoulders are still closed off for us. But because the shoulders can only stay closed for 1.5 seconds, and right now our stride's for 2 seconds, that means after that 1 second of staying closed, everything after that is now opening up. But there's a lot of things that we do well, and I'm excited to start working on these changes with you. All right, bud, we're going to have your video play through twice here. The first time here is going to be continuous. The second time we're going to pause it at the moment of foot strike, so that way you can compare the positions that your body's in to the positions of the big leaguers that we just discussed. Okay, so here we are at foot strike. We can see that we have driven through that big toe real well. We see the knee. We'll get to that in a moment, but the knee is at foot strike. The knee has rotated, which the combination of the foot driving through that big toe and the knee rotating is what helps get this back hip here to come through, to get through. So our lower body has done a really good job of the rotational process that it needs to go through by the time that front foot gets into the ground. What we are going to see as we come out of this is a very high arm slot coming out of a position that's not curved a whole lot, which is good. We're in a good, strong body position. And a lot of times when guys' arms are this elevated up above their head, it's because their head is like tilted way over here and their spine is doing one of these jobs. But your spine is here. So we're good in that regard. We do a good job of getting ourselves to drive this chest out in front, out in front, out in front. And one of the things that you're asking was, should both my feet be finishing on this mound or not? The one thing we can be thinking about is, if I'm rotating, let's draw a line here down the center of your body. That's not a perfectly straight line. It's hard to do that on a trackpad, but let's imagine that straight down the middle of your body there. We're trying to take this back shoulder here, this back elbow, and this back hand, and we're trying to get it to whip around this quote-unquote flagpole as violently as we can in this type of path. And as it rotates around this path, somewhere around this area is where that ball will be getting released out of our fingers. The ball will be coming out of our hands around that area somewhere. And then we would want to finish that motion to slow it down in the same type of pattern that we started it. Just like if I'm going to jump vertically straight up in the air, when I come down, I'm not going to come down with my legs completely straight and just lean backwards, right? That's not going to help slow me down. I have to slow myself down in the same way that I accelerated myself. So I accelerated myself by first bending my knees to then jump up. So now when I land, I need to land and continue to bend my knees until I've stopped. Same thing here. I've rotated around to get the ball out. I need to continue to rotate around to slow that throw down. So it would make more sense if our body was finishing on this side of that center line versus this side. It would make more sense if we, and left and rights are not a good way to talk about mechanics, but just to make it simple right now, our perspective facing you, it would make more sense if you're finishing on the right side of this line versus the left side of that line because of that energy coming across. And we can see your body kind of does the opposite of that. And the main reason is if we just watch this leg, we talk about us wanting to rotate around a firm front side when we were watching those big leaguer videos. Talking about this knee maybe locking out, stiffening up, firming up, or at least becoming firm and the knee not going any more forward than it is. Notice how your knee continues to go forward. Your knee continues to go forward. And not only is your knee continuing to go forward, but when we look at the front view, we look at hip, knee, ankle. As it throws, our knee has gone way over here, and our hip has also gone over here. And like we talked about in the big league videos, we need to be able to not just get out in front of that firm front side, but we need to be able to get around that firm front side. We're not able to get around that front side because it's not firm. It's falling this way as we're trying to rotate this way. So at the end of the day, the force that's going this way is going to win because that's where the leg is at. That's what's coming around. So as this falls that way, by the time this foot gets in the ground, it's going to be way over here. But if this leg was able to stay firm, we would be able to continue to rotate that leg around this way. And then our foot may land here. It may land here. It may land way over here. But it would definitely not take our body this way. So that is the answer to your question of where should my back leg be landing, on the mound or not on the mound. And I told you I can't really answer that question until we look at this video because there's probably some things that are leading to that. So there's that explanation for you. Now, I want to talk about how we are starting on the mound. You're a big kid. We want to make ourselves look as big as we possibly can. So we want to think about when we come set, our front leg not having a bend to it. We want our front leg straight, but we do want our back knee bent. We want it bent so that our body weight can be more back than it is right now. Because in order for you to get your leg up off the ground, you're going to have to shift your weight back. So now we're going to start to face better base runners, or at least better coached base runners, who are going to be taught that it's not always just about watching this heel. But if you notice a guy who has to shift his weight back in order to get that leg off the ground, now all I have to do is just watch the butt. Once I see this happen, boom, if I had the steal sign, I'm off. Or at least I'm getting into my secondary a little bit earlier than everyone else could, or earlier than anyone else could if I was just starting with my weight already back here. So we want to think about starting strong so that way we can stay strong. Right now, we're kind of just starting neutral. And then we got to get strong to start. We just want to start strong so we can stay strong. After that, if we cleaned up this line here and we said, here's the top of your leg lift, here's the top of your head, and we'll draw this line as straight as I can down to the ground. Okay, and we'll say there's that foot. I want us to pay attention, and we're going to do that same thing over here of distance from the pitching rubber out. And we're going to see or plot the slope that your body is traveling down the mound. Okay, so boom, we will draw your head again. And we can't plot anything forward because there's been no progress with your nose. It's been the same spot. Then we'll get to here. So now that nose has finally gotten somewhere, we'll plot the head again. So I'm thinking you're seeing what's going on here. So we went from being here to falling down, and now we're just going straight out. And what we know about slopes, or maybe you don't know these about slopes yet, but the slope you took was like this. We could also then just have a slope like this, but neither of those paths to go from A up here to B down here, which is your foot strike. A is your knee at the top of your leg lift. These two paths are not the fastest or the most efficient. A path something like this is somewhere in the middle. We can just see yours is just from A down to B out to C. This type of delivery would be very efficient when we are having to pitch on flat ground. But we are now on this slope. So our body needs to more replicate that slope. And to give you a good example of that, where's he at? Oh, here he is. I have Ryan Halsey here for you. So we'll go from the top of the leg lift here, and it's hard to know where, okay, so there's his back hip, top of his leg lift. We'll go back hip and nose. We'll plot those two things. Back hip and nose. Back hip and nose. Oops, that's a line, but that's almost exactly the path it took. And nose. And then foot strike. Okay, so there's his path of energies in there, right? Which was a lot different than the down and out path, and a lot different than the straight line path. That's somewhere in between. That is the most efficient, fastest path to get from A to B. And when we are in the stretch, not only is time against us, but we need to create as much energy as we can in that short amount of time. So we need to think about less sinking, more going. We need to think, get the hips going forward. Get that hip going forward. Get my hips going forward. Rather than sink myself down. Sink myself down. Okay, both got a great high leg lift. Hands are both at nice high position. His are a little bit behind his ear. Yours are more in line with your chest. Your back knee's bent a lot. His back knee's not bent that much, but again, that's the started strong. Okay, back knee's bent, front knee's not. He's starting strong. He's starting with that weight back so he doesn't have to shift it back to get that leg up. Versus you having to shift that weight, shift all that weight back to get that leg up. But then we're talking about that you going down, 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 down before you start to go out at all. Halsey is already going out. He's already going out. Already going out. So when that leg starts to go down, he's going to continue to go down and out. Down and out. Okay. The final thing we want to think about is staying closed as long as we can. The upper body. If we're thinking from our shoulder to our elbow, we want to keep that closed for as long as possible. As soon as we get on this side of this line, we are open, which means as long as we are on this side of that line, we are closed. So we want to stay closed for as long as we can. And we can see out that gate, we're going to have to readjust that straight line because that is here. Okay. We want to try to keep this elbow glove on the closed side for as long as we can. And we can just see it gets very straight pretty quick. And now it's difficult to keep it on that closed side. So if we thought of a clock, 12's up here, 6 is down here, 9's over here, you're coming out like 8:30. We want, or let's just say like 7:45, 8 o'clock, you're coming out. Let's come more out like at 8:30. Because if I'm closed over here to begin, and I take the same path I do, I'll finish at 6 instead of finishing at 7:30. So we want to think about staying closed longer. And again, Halsey can show us that real well. We just see when his glove's coming out almost to 9. And then it's able to stay out there at 7 or 8 and 7 before it then gets to 6. And by the time it's at 6, boom, his foot's in the ground. Versus by the time you get to 6, that foot's not in the ground yet. Now we're getting to 6:15, 6:30. And now we're just losing a little bit of that upper, lower half separation. Just a little bit. So we want to think about start in a strong position so we can stay strong. And then we don't want to sink, then drive out. We want to go down and out. So we want to get the hips going. And then we want to just think about staying closed as long as we can with that glove.